Hi, good morning. Outer Banks season 3 just came out, and somehow I completely missed this show when it first released, so I binged it. Not exactly sure what I was busy doing in April of 2020, but I spent the weekend planning on my couch, so I'm all caught up now. This show has so much going on. There's drama and treasure hunts, and the boys are constantly fighting. And what's that? You're asking, did I say treasure hunts? Yeah. Yeah, there's treasure hunts in this show, but we'll get to that. So we start off with our main guy telling us all about the Outer Banks. There's one part called Figure 8, which is where the rich people live, and they're called the Kooks. And then there's this other part called the Cut, where the working class people live, and they're called the Pokes. And naturally, these two groups are mortal enemies that absolutely hate each other. Well, for the most part, because we have JJ, who's our poor blonde kid that has a shitty dad, Hope, who's our poor smart kid who works for his dad sometimes, John B, who's our poor main character and his dad has been missing at sea, and Kiara, who's, wait, this can't be right. She's rich and she hangs out with Pokes? Ugh, disgusting. Unacceptable, Kiara. Don't worry though, she's not just rich. She's also the only girl in this friend group, which means all of her friends have a crush on her. The curse of being a teenage girl with male friends. But it's okay because John B actually also has a crush on the daughter of the guy who he works for, Sarah Cameron. Sarah's weird and dating Topper, who has a totally normal name, and Topper is friends with Sarah's brother Rafe, who has an even more normal name. Those are our main kids, and I use the word kids loosely because this guy that plays John B is literally 6 months older than me, and I'm turning 30 this month. On the 16th, by the way, if anyone wants to wish me happy birthday. Our first season starts about 9 months after John B's dad has gone missing at sea, presumably looking for the Royal Merchant, which is a boat that sank forever ago and supposedly has a bunch of gold in it. His absence leaves John B to Dodge Child Services, who want to relocate him to a foster home because he's currently an orphan living alone, but their home visit is delayed when this huge storm Agatha rolls in and knocks out power to the island. The day after the storm, John B, JJ, Pope, and Kiara, who will hereafter be referred to as the gang, head out on the water and they come across a sunken boat. They swim down to it to explore and they find a key that leads to a motel. And I gotta say, I admire these kids' ability to just go on an adventure. I could never. I need to know exactly what I'm gonna be doing before I do it. I need to know where I'm going, who else will be there, how long will I be there, will there be food, what's the bathroom situation like, so many questions. But these kids, they just find a key in a sunken boat, follow it to a motel where they find money and a gun, and then head back to the boat where they find John B's dad's compass, and then they start getting chased by two scary dudes who start shooting at them. So okay, never mind, I take back what I said. This is why I don't go on adventures. 1 second you're diving down to explore a cool boat, and the next you're being shot at by some goons. But adventure or not, they're still teens, so they throw a kegger on the beach, and it's only a matter of time before the boys start fighting. The very first of many boy fights. But hey, back to that compass. They realize it has the word Redfield in it, which eventually leads them to a crypt where they find a FedEx envelope from John B's dad that literally has a treasure map in it. Oh man, the adventure's just starting. Prepare to be shot at a whole lot more. So the gang plans to wait for good weather so they can go out on the water and look for the sunken Royal Merchant from the map, but instead they just don't do that and they go out when it's about to storm anyway. They drive their little water drone down to the boat, but there's no gold on the boat, so they assume someone must have beaten them to it. So they head back. John B heads home to find Child Services waiting to take him away, but he makes a run for it and bumps into Sarah, who sneaks him into her house to get him a band-aid and give him a little history lesson about the founder of Tanny Hill, who bought all of the land and paid in gold. Huh, gold you say? There was supposed to be a whole bunch of that on the Royal Merchant. And wouldn't you know, the founder of Tanny Hill was a passenger on the Royal Merchant. But wait, there were no survivors. So what the heck is going on here? Well, the answer might be in the archives, and Sarah could get a trustee pass, but only if she can tag along, so she's part of the gang now. So Sarah and John B head off to town, and they have a little day with a little fashion montage and fall in a little bit of love or whatever, you know, teenage stuff. Meanwhile, at a movie screening on the island, wouldn't you know it, the boys are fighting again. When they get back to the island, John B declares his love for Sarah, doing this whole big thing in the freaking rain, and they decide to secretly date. Yeah, that's totally gonna work out well. It immediately doesn't work out well when JJ infiltrates a midsummer's party to pass a note to Sarah for John B, and he gets attacked by Rafe and his friends, which means the boys are fighting again. I can't help but point out this show is so extra. There's like a scene in episode 5 where John B meets up with Sarah to get a map from her, and instead of meeting somewhere normal, they meet in like this super tall Hawk's Nest building, and it's storming and there's thunder and lightning and wind, and they're just standing in the rain, in the storm, just chatting until Topper shows up and confronts them, and he pushes John B, who falls through the railing of the bird's nest tower, and they get him to the hospital where Ward shows up and just offers to be his legal guardian. Okay, I guess that solves the child services problem. The gang breaks into this old lady's house to look for the gold bars, which is a crime, but also successful because they find some. So cool, they're one step closer to being rich. All they need to do is figure out a way to get the gold out. Enter Ward, who takes John B out on the water to get information about the gold, telling him that he can help with the logistics of extracting it and liquidating it. But John B plays dumb and actually figures out that Ward had something to do with his dad's death. So he tries to turn the boat around, but Ward attacks him and we get another boy fight. John B escapes and demands answers from this lady Lana, who explains that Ward and Big John, John B's dad, got into a fight on the day that he disappeared. Ward had pushed John B and he hit his head, and then instead of calling for help, Ward took his map and pushed him overboard. Supposedly, the dad survived and made it to an island where he carved the word Redfield into a compass that Lana's husband later found. After John B hears this, he heads to the Cameron's house to tell Sarah that her dad killed his dad, and she just doesn't believe him. Like, why would he make that up? And to make things worse, Ward Cameron got to the gold before the kids when he realized it was at the old lady's house. He plans to fly to the Bahamas, and he's in the plane ready to fly the gold to Nassau, but John B stops the plane with his van, and in comes the good sheriff, finally arresting Ward for Big John's murder, but Rafe shoots her and laughs like the crazy person that he is. John B gets away, and Ward makes Rafe take Sarah home, and then he pins the sheriff's death on John B, as he's been weaving this whole web of lies trying to paint John B as like a troubled kid. So then when John B goes to the sheriff's office to tell them what happened, he realizes that they think he killed the sheriff and he has to make a run for it. Back at the Cameron house, Ward tells Sarah that she needs to choose between her family and John B. And my guy, I'm telling you right now, she's a teenage girl. She's picking the boy. John B's on the run, and the gang is working to get a boat ready for him when they're interrupted by Rafe and Barry, and gosh dang it, the boys start fighting again. Luckily, Pope gets in a few good hits, and they're out of there with the boat. John B makes it to the boat and picks up Sarah as he's sailing away. They're out on the water, and just when they think they're in the clear, power is restored to the island so everyone can see them in their boat. The cops start chasing them, and their only way to escape is to sail into a storm, because of course it is, and of course it's storming again. The top cop even gets Ward to plead with John B to bring Sarah back, but John B's like, you took everything from me. I'm coming for you. And they keep sailing into the storm, and then their boat fully flips over. But don't worry, these are our main characters. So not only did they survive, but they held on to the chunk of gold, and they use it to get the attention of a passing boat, which picks them up. And where's the boat going? The Bahamas. Hey, that's where the gold is. Wow, what a wild ride. And that was just season 1. So season 2 starts, and within just a couple minutes, we get our first boy fight between JJ and Kels, which is totally understandable as he was talking shit about John B. And at this point, JJ, Kiara, and Pope all think that John B and Sarah are dead, so they're going to be especially sensitive. But they're actually getting a free ride on the boat that picked them up. But, the boat captain just found out there's a $50,000 reward for John B. So he plans to turn them in when they get to the port, because they can't do it right now because they got contraband on board. So the boat pulls into port, and the captain tries to turn in John B, but he and Sarah escape through a window, and they make it to a hotel where John B steals a housekeeper's phone to send a selfie of himself and Sarah to his friends to let them know that they're alive. Sarah tells John B not to go to her family's vacation house, which is literally 2 seconds away and probably has the gold, so he just waits until she goes to sleep and goes there anyway. She wakes up to find that he's missing, and when she goes to look for him, she gets kidnapped by the boat crew as bait to get John B to come back to them. To try and clear John B's name, his friends freak out Ward's pilot Gavin by calling him, saying they know the truth about what happened. And this was not a good idea, because Gavin then wants to meet with Ward, because it turns out he kept the gun that Rafe used to kill the sheriff, and he's using it as leverage to ask for more money. But instead of more money, he gets death. They get in a fight and Ward kills him. Good job, kids. That worked out, huh? Pope recorded the whole thing, but the camera gets ruined, so the sheriff doesn't really believe them when they tell him what happened until they go into the sewers to find the gun that had gotten lost in the fight. And they bring it to him, and he just kind of puts it in his desk drawer. What's he gonna do with it? We don't know. Back in the Bahamas, even though the boat crew tried to turn them into the cops, Sarah has the idea to work with them to try and steal the gold when her dad shows up to move it out of the country. The heist is successful until it isn't. John B. and Sarah manage to get the truck that has the gold in it, but Sarah gets shot by Rafe, and her and John B. need to go find this doctor who's not really a doctor, and then Sarah dies, but then somehow she's just alive again. I don't know what that was about, but while the boat crew is waiting for them to meet up with them, the police show up and seize the gold. Meanwhile, the gang is driving out to Charleston to meet some rich benefactor who wants to meet Pope. This woman, Carla Limbry, knows everything about Ward. How he killed John B.'s dad, how Rafe shot the sheriff, how they stole the gold from the kids, and she just happens to also be looking for the Royal Merchant because there was some cross on it and she believes that Pope has the key. He doesn't, and he has no clue what she's talking about, but she just doesn't believe him, so she tries to hold him hostage, thinking she can exchange him for the key, but he and JJ and Kiara manage to escape. With the gold gone, John B. and Sarah set off on her family's boat, get ocean married, and sail until they find land, which just happens to be Charleston, where they run into JJ, Kiara, and Pope. What a crazy coincidence. I mean, is that even possible? Well, I couldn't identify Charleston on a map if my life depended on it, so it's not really my place to question the geographical integrity of their journey. The gang is reunited and they all return to the Outer Banks, but they don't go home just yet because they're going to be in so much trouble. So they might as well stay out for another 12 hours and they spend the day drinking and hanging out. These kids are kind of brats. I'm sorry, but they are. The next day, Sarah has the bright idea to go to her dad to ask him to turn in Rafe, and he says no. So that mission was a fail, and then she heads back and leads the cops right to John B. So double fail, girl. John B. gets arrested, and after he's arraigned in court, the kids finally go home. You'd think Pope would be in trouble for stealing and abandoning his dad's truck, but nope, he's just off the hook, and he has a lead on where to find the key that Carla's after. Then it's Kiara's turn, and she just cannot read the room. She tells her mom that John B is back and immediately asks for money for his defense. And my God, she is just so obsessed with being a poke. It drives me crazy. But it's like she's a teenager and she keeps disappearing for days and not calling and getting in trouble. And her mom's over here worried about, like, is my daughter even alive? But Kiara's just like, I can't help it, Mom. I'm a pogue. So finally her mom's like, fine, go live like a pogue, and kicks her out. JJ comes up with a whole ass escape plan to get John B out of jail, which doesn't work, not a surprise. So he gets caught. Meanwhile, Sarah is being drowned by her brother Rafe because she thought she was meeting up with her sister Wheezy, another normal name. And then John B is being strangled by an inmate because Ward bribed a cop to get him killed. Big night for the kids. But again, these are our main characters, so they're safe. Kiara and Pope rescue JJ, Topper rescues Sarah, and John B rescues himself by overpowering a man 3 times his size. Cut to the top cop and previously bad cop finally getting the results back from the gun that the kids turned in, and it confirms that it was used to kill the sheriff, so Rafe gets arrested and John B gets released. Limbry shows up to confront the gang, demanding the key, which Pope technically does have now, but John B gives her a fake key in exchange for the tape where Ward's pilot incriminates him. Ward tries to send his son away, but instead, Rafe, in his infinite wisdom, gets Barry to take him out on the water to stand his ground, I guess. But Barry set him up so the cops show up and the loser gets arrested. John B takes the tape to the cops who put out a warrant for Ward's arrest, and of course, the gang has to get themselves involved. So they head to the Cameron house where Ward is out on his boat on the water, making a whole big show, confessing that he did all of it, and then he freaking blows up the boat, leaving behind a taped confession, confessing to killing Big John, the sheriff, and Gavin, which means Rafe is off the hook. Not great. But hey, let's get our minds off it by going to a party. So the gang heads to a bonfire where, what happens? You guessed it, the boys start fighting. Maybe the bonfire wasn't such a great idea, so the gang head back to the house where Renfield shows up looking for the key with freaking archers in the woods surrounding the gang, so Pope hands it over. Apparently, Carla wants to get the cross because she believes it has a magic garment inside that can heal her, which is ridiculous. With the key, she shows up to the Cameron house looking for the island room where she teams up with Rafe, eventually finding the angel oak tree where the true treasure is supposedly buried. They dig up the spot to find a coffin, not the cross. The gang shows up late, but end up finding a hole in the angel oak tree where they pull out a spyglass that has another clue on it that leads them to a church. At the church, Pope finds the cross in one of the ceiling beams, and I don't know enough about architecture or physics to question it. They try to get the cross out of the church, but Pope starts having an allergic reaction, so they need to leave the cross for now. Just for now, they're totally going to come back for it, and as soon as they leave, Rafe and Renfield swoop in and take the cross. Okay, that sounds about right. They get Pope to an EMT who gives him some of that epi stuff, so he survives. But on the way back to the church, he's driving like a man, and he crashes the car. That's 2 cars that he's ruined now. I don't know why they let him drive. And I don't feel bad about them crashing because it's their own fault. While they're on the side of the road, Rafe and Renfield pass them in a truck, so it's like, they got the cross. Carla uses the key to unlock it, but there's nothing inside, no magic garment. Renfield double crosses her, so she shoots him, and then she demands Rafe's help, and he just fakes her out so he can get the gun, and then he drives home with the cross. At the Cameron house, Sarah steals the truck keys from Rafe's room, but instead of getting in the truck and driving away, she decides to look in the back, which gives Rafe enough time to catch her and trap her. And then Rose lets her out and gives her some tea, and what a surprise, the tea is drugged. So they kidnap Sarah. And I'm just wondering, why didn't you just drive away? Why did you have to look in the back? You could have just got in the truck, driven away, and looked at it afterward. These kids. Anyway, Kiara has gotten in so much trouble with her parents for disappearing for days and stealing her dad's truck that they finally said if she does not stop hanging out with these Pogue boys, they're going to send her to a program for troubled teens. So what does she do when Pogue calls? She steals her mom's car to go rescue him. Obviously. The gang makes it to the wharf while they're loading the cross and stow away on a cargo container that gets them on the same ship as the cross and Sarah. Oh, and Ward, because surprise, he's alive. And what another crazy coincidence. The boat's Cleo's. Cleo from the boat crew. She has her own boat, apparently, and it's this one. So she helps the gang as they trap the crew and try to steal back the cross. John B. heads off to look for Sarah before he's confronted by Rafe with the gaff hook, which is some fishing thing that I haven't talked about, which, by the way, Ward used to kill those 2 goons from the first season, but who cares? The boys are fighting again. Ward finds Sarah on board, and he says, regretfully, "You're not one of us, and you never will be. You're one of them," meaning a Pogue, and he strangles her, his own freaking daughter. But John B comes in and they have a fight, and Ward hits his head just like Big John had. But instead of throwing him overboard like they should have, John B and Sarah just leave him to go meet the others. Cleo and Pope can't get the cross, so Pope tries to drop it in the ocean, but Rafe had a hold of a rope that's around it, so he manages to hang on. And I had to take a minute. I had to pause the show to think, how heavy is this cross? Because it fell to the ground in the church and it nearly crushed Pope. And then the 5 kids couldn't carry it. But then Rafe and Renfield could. But surely it would be too heavy for Rafe to be able to just hold on to it. So actually, I just looked it up and I'm not alone. There are people on Reddit who were asking about the weight too. And someone said it would have been thousands of pounds. Someone else said that it was just gold plated. But still, it was made to seem really heavy. And I don't think Rafe would have been able to hold on to it. And I think I'm just disappointed that it didn't pull him overboard, because his greed and inability to let go of the cross being the reason he died would have been nice. But anyway, the whole gang escapes and they make it to some random island and just decide to stay there, calling it Pogelandia. Meanwhile, they're literally considered missing at home. Their parents just don't know if they're alive or not. Oh, but speaking of being alive, Big John's alive. There's a twist for you. I don't think I like him because he neglected his son to go search for some treasure, but I guess we'll see. But that's where season 2 and this video end, with the kids living on some random island, Ward is alive, Big John is alive and working with Carla, and Rafe is still, unfortunately, alive. I'm kind of obsessed with this show now. Everything's turned up to 150%. The kids are always getting in trouble, and just when they solve a problem, they create a new one for themselves, and man, everybody takes the treasure so seriously. Lucky for me, I don't have to wait for the next season to come out because it's out right now. So I'm going to go watch that. If you've watched this far into the video, thank you, and leave a comment letting me know which boy fight was your favorite. Be sure to like and subscribe. Please and thank you. Bye.